can't talk about New Orleans and the hospitality business without mentioning the Brennan family. They've built some of the strongest brands in the culinary world right in the middle of New Orleans. And with its world-renowned Commander's Palace taking center stage, the Brennan family has solidified their place in history as one of the great names in hospitality. To the Brennans, this has always been a family business, with generations of Brennans teaching and influencing some of the world's most successful restaurateurs. Names like Paul Prudhomme, Emeril Lagasse, Andrew Zimmern, and Danny Meyer have either worked at or been touched by the Brennan brand. Restaurants aren't the only way the Brennans have made their mark on New Orleans and the hospitality world. Clark Brennan is third generation captain of the crew of Bacchus, one of the largest and most celebrated carnival crews in New Orleans.
Two weeks from tonight, one of Carnival's biggest parades will hit the streets. And today, members of the crew of Bacchus opened up their float den to host a party for their family and friends. This year's Bacchus theme salutes the Wild Wild West, and more than 24 original Kern Studios floats were on display today in advance of the big parade.
It's an annual event to where all of our members and their families can come out. And the weather's absolutely beautiful today. And so we'll have 3,000 or 4,000 people here. And just lots of drinks and food and a lot of events for the children. You know, they have face painters and character artists and games, magicians, clowns. It's about the family today.
I had the opportunity to interview Mr. Brennan, and we discussed, among other things, how the pandemic is affecting the restaurants, Bacchus, and what he looks for when hiring someone. We have with us today Dr. Betsy Garrison, Director of the School of Human and Environmental Sciences, which houses the hospitality program at the University of Arkansas, along with Dr. Kellyanne Way. Is Kathy Smith here? No, she's not with us? Okay, it's Stephanie Hubert, and some students I see joined us as well. So we have that also. Now, welcome everyone. I'm thrilled to have Mr. Clark Brennan joining us today. In the hospitality and restaurant business, the Brennan family is royalty, especially in the New Orleans area. In 2014, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Brennan succeeded his father, Pip Brennan, as captain of the crew of Bacchus. Am I right on that date? Is that roughly
Yes,
the
sir.
time frame?
Yes,
All
sir.
And if you're not familiar with this crew, guys, it is one of the big ones of all of Carnival in North America. And they've had celebrity kings like who is it? Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, Will Ferrell, Nicolas Cage, Jim Belushi. I went through the list there that was there, and it was just it's amazing the talent that you've had there. So when it comes to hospitality, Mr. Brennan has certainly had it in his DNA. So thanks for joining us, and we appreciate your time. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, sure. I'm 55 years old. I was born and raised in New Orleans to two great parents, Barbara and Pip Brennan. I am third generation Brennan. My grandfather, Owen Brennan Sr., started it all back in 1946. You know, from just a great, vibrant, energetic Irishman, he really forged and pushed the New Orleans tourism scene, being what it is today, came from a long way. Because back then you only had probably, you know, again, let's just say restaurants. Now, I'm sure there was some little stuff in neighborhoods. But again, way back then, most of New Orleans was strictly the French Quarter and some outlying areas. Your suburbs really hadn't come around yet, Metairie and the North Shore, et cetera. That was all marshland. So at that time, back in the 40s, you had, you know, maybe 10 restaurants in New Orleans. Today, I just read something just today, and y'all might know better than I do, but there was like 1,600 restaurants in New Orleans. There's about 200 more restaurants than they were pre-Katrina. Mm-hmm. So the industry has expanded and has blown up, which is wonderful for the city of New Orleans, and that's what makes New Orleans great. and unique. Is it's great food, it's great hospitality, it's great fun. So then my grandfather died in 1956 at the age of 45 years old. And Brennan's was on Bourbon Street at the time. And then right in the middle of that, the landlord wanted 50% of the business when he was on Bourbon Street. So he had negotiated with Tulane University, who owned property on Royal Street, 417 Royal Street, where Brennan's is presently located. He dies, then my Aunt Ella Brennan and my dad, Owen Pip Brennan Jr., were really the forefront. And I would also say my Uncle Dick Brennan. They were the three real workers at the time in the Brennan family. My dad was Owen Sr.'s son, but my grandfather's brothers and sisters were involved as well. So they moved the restaurant at that time to 417 Royal Street, and then it just took off. And the big thing that made Brennan's famous was breakfast at Brennan's. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm assuming you've read some of the stories, but it was where everybody did dinner, but nobody did breakfast. And so my grandfather said, I've got to do something that's different. I've got to be one up on my competitors. And they were all great friends, but they did compete. And New Orleans has great restaurants, and we're all there to help each other, but you always want to be the best. Mm-hmm. And in that case, Antoine's came out with a book about Antoine's and dinner. And my grandfather said, well, why can't we do breakfast at Brennan's? And that's where it came to be. He wanted a different way of doing things. And it was just a phenomenon, that just took off. And New Orleans was such a hub for tourism at the time, not as big as it is today, but it was still, and it still is, one of the top 5 cities in the world for tourism, for people want to visit there. And back then, it was a much smaller world. So celebrities in Hollywood would come, and because of the Mississippi River and the port there, and it was one of the largest ports in the country at the time. And so all the military people came in and out of New Orleans. All of South America's products to and from came through New Orleans. So New Orleans was a major hub for back in the 40s. Mm-hmm. And that helped. And my grandfather was such a great entertainer and someone that helped and loved people, that anyone that came to the city of New Orleans, he made them his friend. And so writers and actors and actresses, and when the word starts to travel, you got to go to New Orleans, and you got to go see Owen at Brennan's, and you got to have breakfast at Brennan's, and you have to have a brandy milk punch in the courtyard. It just became an amazing thing, and people wrote about it because no one else really did breakfast like Brennan's does breakfast. And so it gave him that leg up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, those were the early influencers. Yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that was, now it's social media influencers, and that was the early, I guess, the first iteration. So he was a trendsetter there.
Sure. So, yeah. And it is somewhat kind of sad because you're talking about the trendsetters back then in the 40s and 50s, my grandfather, mm-hmm. My dad, that generation now, they're all in their 80s, 86 to 90. And there's only, there's not a lot left of that generation. My dad's probably one of the, I would say, less than 5 of the restaurateurs and the hoteliers left in the city of New Orleans from that generation that really launched New Orleans into what it is today.
Yeah. What, where do you spend most of your time? You spend it with the restaurants or you spend it on Bacchus?
Well, good question. Bacchus is a non-paid job.
Sure. But you're third generation there, aren't you?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so it is a big operation. We have 1,600 members. We have about a $6 million budget per year. But I have a phenomenal board of directors. I have great office staff. I have two in the office. And then we bring in probably 2 volunteers. Well, I would not even, we pay them. So it'd be temp work for about 6 months a year. So I work and get paid through the business, but Bacchus, just like today, I had a meeting this morning, I have another meeting this afternoon, but it gives me the freedom to do what I need to do with Bacchus. And it's just like anybody that has a job, you got to do your job to make sure you get your paycheck, but on my off time, I can do what I want.
Yeah. By the way, all the students here are going to want to have those part-time gigs with you. They're all just chomping. I know they'll send me the emails afterwards.
Sure.
And
Sure.
you know, so if you take any interns, let me tell you, sir, we got you set up there.
I want to be the intern on Bacchus.
Yeah.
Well, I'm serious when I say this. If you're really interested, get with Rob or you can contact me. And we get really ramped up in probably December, January. Mardi Gras this year is February the 16th is Mardi Gras Day for 2021. And Bacchus Sunday is Valentine's Night this year.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. That's good. Yeah. I'm looking at the eyes of our students right now going, wait a minute. Yeah. So, and Kelly. So,
Yeah. No
and
class
by the
on
way,
Monday.
your family history is not only required reading for a lot of our students, but so was the movie Ella Brennan.
Sure.
We got that one. We got a look at that. And that was a well done piece, by the way. I thought
They did a great job. Really, my cousin T.
Yeah.
And Lally Brennan really worked hard with Aunt Ella and Aunt Dottie on that. And again, it's, Dottie Brennan is one of those people she's still alive. That's my aunt.
Yeah.
That's my dad's aunt. It's my great aunt. So Dottie and my dad are the last 2 of that generation.
Wow.
We just had Ella passed away.
Yeah.
Dookie Chase, gosh darn it, I can't think of her first name. I forget
Leah.
it. But
Is it
what was
Leah
her first
Chase?
name? Leah Chase. Yeah. I mean, just an amazing person. And she died last year as well, right close to when my Aunt Ella died. And some of the great chefs, Chef Mike Roussel, Jamie Shannon,
Ruth
Paul
Olin
Prudhomme,
not too long ago did too.
Paul Prudhomme. So
Yeah.
for me personally, it's sad to see that generation go. But it is for the next generation to fill those huge shoes, and I mean huge shoes, to maintain the classic New Orleans culture, to move forward but you can't be afraid of change either. And so there are different ways. Look at us today having a meeting like this. I would never dreamt of this before.
Right.
But we must be flexible and change. And in this business, in the restaurant hospitality business, I personally think the best asset of anyone is to be flexible and to be able to think on your feet. Because in this business, nothing is the same daily, much less hourly.
Yes, you're preaching to the choir here. So tell me, how are things now with the restaurants? We're going through a tough time. and consensus is we're going to come out of this. But the governor just yesterday had some new guidelines. I know the mayor, I believe, was supposed to come out with some guidelines today. I've not caught that if she did already. But how are things now with the restaurants?
It is a little confusing when you talk about the governor and then the local government says what they, and so, but there are supposedly, we're opening between Mississippi and Louisiana. Different areas are 25% of capacity with social distancing. Mississippi is 50% of capacity with social distancing. I feel, and I don't mean to be, because I am a caring, loving person in this industry, you have to be that way. Like when I interview people, I say, do you like people or you love people? And if they say they like people, that's tough. You have to love people in this industry. And so that being said, it's a very difficult position that we're in. First, we're huggers, we're kissers, we're handshakers in this industry. My world is upside down right now because I can't touch or hug or see anybody. You know, when I have my customers come in the door, you know, you got to give the chicken dance and kind of give them an elbow. It's very odd to me, especially Southern hospitality. So it's going to be a tough road for restaurants. Like I said, there's 1,600 restaurants. A lot of these restaurants, in my personal opinion, might not make it if we continue the shutdowns that we're having. We have to be safe, but we can't be so safe to a point that everyone's going out of business too. And so, you know, I feel like if you want, and you're not scared, but you want to be safe as possible and you want to stay home, that's fine. But the others that feel like we can go out and with social distancing and be safe, whether it's a mask or hand sanitizer or 6 feet apart from each other, we need to be able to do that too. And I don't want the government to be so hands-on and putting the thumb down and say you can't do anything, because we're going to have some major economic problems if we don't get this thing back open quickly.
Yeah, and this isn't just a...
That's me personally. I'm not getting into politics, but that's
No.
a dollar and cents real life issue.
Yeah. What about your restaurants? Are they, are you doing anything unique for either employee engagement, or how are you handling that and the customer experience?
Well, we are putting, you know, we've definitely had layoffs, you know, we've applied for PPE or PPP. Some of it's come through, some of it's not. I think all of this is going to come, but again, when millions of people are unemployed, unemployment has not come through for some people, even though they've applied for it. So it's a constant email and communication. Communication is key in the environment that we're in today, plus on a daily basis, you have to have that. So we want to get back open as soon as possible. And we've done some takeout food, but it doesn't really pay the bills. You know, the bigger restaurants in the French Quarter, some have not. But again, I mean, how many takeout orders can you do?
Right.
You know, when you've got, you know, 200 employees at Brennan's restaurant, you know, takeout's not going to pay those bills.
Yeah, I understand. Well, now, the same question with Bacchus. And, you know, we're going to be on the fringes of this pandemic. And, you know, frankly, Mardi Gras has taken a lot of heat lately for this. How do you see it affecting Mardi Gras in general and Bacchus, the crew itself?
Sure. You know, I am the captain of Bacchus, so I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of press requests for comment. And, you know, the press can be your friend and they can hurt you as well. So I'm very careful in what I say. But I will say that for the first time, what well, I forget the paper that was not the Washington Post. I'll remember it. But guy called me about all the stuff that was happening 6 weeks ago, and right after Mardi Gras, everybody, the press, it was all Mardi Gras' fault, and the large gatherings. Now, granted, it makes some sense that could have caused, but my point was we cannot point the finger at Mardi Gras and Mardi Gras only for the cause of the problem in the city of New Orleans. Odds are there was a lot of people, there was millions of people in New Orleans from all over the world. So I'm sure some people did get infected from Mardi Gras. But you can't blame everything on Mardi Gras. And it would be an injustice to do that. And that's what I told this guy. And I said, the press is always looking for the big story. They're always looking for the blood and guts instead of the joy and happiness in the world. And I said, y'all need to be careful what you're saying about Mardi Gras, because it is a huge economic engine for our city and our region and our state. And I said, who's to say it wasn't at somebody's wedding of 400 people? Who's to say it wasn't two guys having a beer at a bar? I mean, we have people in and out of our city all the time. Just like any large city has people coming in and out. We had cruise ships coming in and out of the city of New Orleans on a regular basis. Over 10,000 people a week come into our city just from cruise ships. So to point it at Mardi Gras, again, I said was an injustice. He did print my words, which I was very thankful that he did that. I got some heat for that, but it's the truth. You can't just blame Mardi Gras. And my other point was you start blaming large gatherings, outdoor gatherings at that. You're going to start you're just going to scare people to where they don't want to go anywhere. And I told him, this is weeks ago. I said, what happens if, the Major League Baseball says we're ready to play and the New York Yankees, nobody's going to go. Forget Mardi Gras. What about football season? And now there's some talk about the NFL and the NCAA. Well, if you keep scaring people, are they going to want to go and put 100,000 people in Tiger Stadium? So it's just, we need to be careful. Yes. But we also need to be careful that we're not just scaring everybody out of their wits to where we're going to have a society that just sits back and does nothing. Because economically, we do need to eat as well. And so,
and it is part of the culture of South Louisiana. Now,
as far as Bacchus is concerned, Rob, you were asking about Bacchus.
Yeah.
I've just yesterday and today, I've had these conference calls with my float lieutenants. We have 1,600 riders. And so for right now, I've had 2 of my 3 meetings. I have another one at 5 o'clock today. So of the 2/3 of my float lieutenants so far, the feedback from their riders on their floats, they're all Bacchus members, but they're riders. And most of our floats are family members, business associates, and friends. So everybody knows everybody on the same float. I'm happy to say that the vast majority of the riders we're rolling. Good. And my position as the captain of Bacchus, we're positive. We are moving forward to have Mardi Gras 2021.
Yeah.
And the riders are paying their money, they're paying their dues, and they're excited about 2021. Remember, you can control what you can control. You can't control what you can't control. So if they come out in December and say, LaToya Cantrell says, I'm canceling Mardi Gras, it's out of my control.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen if we're safe somewhat to do it. Now, I'm not stupid either. If we have a horrendous relapse, and we're having thousands of people dying, I'm not one to say we're going to go out there either.
Yeah.
But we have to be smart. But I will report to you guys here that the crew of Bacchus is moving forward. We have a business to run. We have private members. It's just like in any club, country club, yacht club, horse club. We have expenses. We have members. They have to pay their dues. And so really nothing is stopped for Bacchus. And the members need to pay their dues if they want to remain a member. And then we'll cross that road, across that bridge when the time comes, whether Mardi Gras will be or not.
Yeah.
In 2021.
I hear you. Let me shift gears real quick here. And let's talk about, because you mentioned some of the things you look for when you're hiring somebody. And we're talking largely to an audience of students here. And they're coming out in this world, and it's going to be a scary thing. Not only is it normally a challenge when you go out, but it is also a challenge during this time. What are some of the characteristics that you look for when you're hiring somebody on any area?
I've interviewed thousands of people in my years.
Yeah.
And you got to have a gut feeling. I use social media a lot today.
Mm-hmm.
When I know I'm interviewing Joe Smith, before he even walks in my door, I go to Facebook and I pull up Joe Smith. Mm-hmm. And so I would highly recommend you be very careful what you post on social media today, because people that are hiring, they're going directly to social media and looking to see what type of person you are. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm just telling you the truth. That's what I do. Once that person comes into my office, I'm looking them straight in the eye. I'm looking how they fidget, what they're doing. Are they engaged? Are they listening to me? The interview process is very important. I would highly recommend, and maybe I'll do it, look at the interview process and look at some of the professionals and what their recommendation is. Don't be looking at your watch. Don't fidget your hands. Don't cross your arms. Be open. Have the body language that is open. Be engaged, and make sure you're keeping good eye contact. Yes, sir. No, sir. Look presentable. It's amazing how people show up for a job interview. It just blows my mind with a lack of respect to show up with cut off jeans and your hair hanging out. We have a younger generation, and casualness is kind of the norm today, but still out of respect for who you're going to meet with, clean up a little bit, shave, it blows my mind sometimes how people show up. So again, the world is casual, but out of your respect for the guy or girl you're going to see, try to look presentable as best as you can. Yes, sir. Let's go.
Well, on the same lines, what kind of advice would you give these students coming out of school for going off in the future? I mean, what kind of advice would you give them for going after those jobs and things they need to look for from their end?
Of the students here that are with us today, what degrees are we looking at?
Guys, go ahead, chime in.
Hospitality management, so all forms of hospitality mainly.
Alexandra?
Apparel merchandising.
Okay. Josie?
And then I'm a master's of hospitality management.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, I love the hospitality business. That's what I'm in. I think it's a great industry because you can go anywhere in the world and get a job. Get your foot in the door. You have a master's in hospitality. I'm sure you've already worked as a waitress or a busser or a hostess or what in the industry. Not all jobs are management jobs. I would highly recommend that you get your foot in the door and be the best waiter, waitress that you can be the best hostess that you can be. I, to this day, still clean dishes. I, to this day, still clean toilets. Because I never want my staff to think that I wouldn't do what they do. If I ask you to clean a floor, I clean floors still to this day. Just because, get out of my way, I'm just going to get it done. I don't have to do that. I've owned my own businesses. I've worked for other people. I've been in management for over 30 years. But you earn so much respect from your bosses and your peers when you're willing to do the little things. And remember, the little things make the difference in this world. It's not the big things, it's the little things. Pulling a chair out for a lady or a man, putting the napkin in the lap. Yes, sir, no, sir. Today's world, a lot of people don't use yes, sir, no, sir. Again, the little things go so far. But in this industry, again, I just think everybody wants to be that executive chef. Everybody wants to be that general manager. And our schools today, in some cases, make our expectations so high that when I get out, I'm going to make $100,000 a year, and I'm going to be the manager of X corporation. I think with as much experience as you're going to have coming out, hopefully you've got work experience. Book experience only gets you so far. So hopefully you're going out and getting jobs in what you want to do. Do something. Again, go wash dishes in a kitchen if it's in the restaurant business. If it's in the apparel business, go work in a store and put your hands on clothes that that when you go to that interview, you can say, yes, I worked at such and such, and I've worked for every summer. I work weekends. The cream rises to the top. Always remember that. And when you work hard and you give 100%, and it's yes, sir, no, sir, don't be taken advantage of, but it's yes, sir, no, sir. And what else can I do for you or my fellow workers? You will rise to the top quickly, and you will get that management job. You will get that goal, that whatever goal you set for yourself. But if you come in and you say, I'm not washing that dish, one of the biggest things that I cannot stand is when somebody says, well, that's not my job. Well, you know what? Washing dishes isn't my job, but I do it a lot. Cleaning pots and pans isn't my job, but I do it a lot. So my employees say Clark Brennan is one of us, and he works just like we do. I carry trays still today. I bus tables still today. I go behind the bar and make cocktails today because I love what I do, and I'm there to help my staff to make sure that our members and our customers are getting the best service possible. And if I just stand in the corner because I'm a Brennan, that doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't help my team. You must be a team player. In the greatest restaurants, the greatest jobs, the greatest companies work as a team. We don't always get along. We don't always like each other, but we must respect each other and work as a team for the betterment of the company.
That's a great answer, great advice. Now I'm gonna shift here again. When you look at managers, because you've got multiple outlets, are there characteristics there that you look for when you move people up?
Again, it all is in the interview process. Yeah. Rob, you got to have that gut feeling. Yeah. For me, I might interview 20 people for a management job. Yeah. It's just that gut feeling. And then when I'm finished interviewing, I want to send that person to my key people and say, hey, Rob, would you interview Josie today? I think she's pretty good. She might be, please, you take a look at her. One of the girls that works for me, Cindy, she always interviews the next person. It's got to be that gut feeling. My biggest thing for Clark Brennan, once I pull that trigger and say I'm going to hire Alexandra, I give everybody 90 days. 90 days. because you could be the best interviewer in the world, but you can't walk and chew gum. I never knew that in the interview process, but when you get on the floor of a restaurant or a hotel and you can't function with other people, and I've made some mistakes. I've hired the wrong person before. But you got 90 days. Yeah. And in 90 days, in most states, it's a right to work state. So you have 90 days to make a decision whether I'm going to keep this person or not. And what I tell that person, hey, we're in this together. We might think you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But you might say, you know what? Clark's an ass, and I don't want to work for him. So in 90 days, you got the rights to move on. Don't stay in a job that you're not happy in, okay? Don't get stuck in a job that you're not happy in. You can make $1 million a year. If you're not happy, it's not worth it. So if you're not getting a chemistry between your peers and your other people that you work for and up management and lower management, if you don't find a good family environment to where people respect each other and work well together, get out, because there's other jobs out there for good people. Yeah. And if you're a slacker and you're not willing to give 100% and you show up and your hair's all whacked out and you're not shaved and why do I come to work today and I'm late, and you're not going to make it either. And so hopefully after 90 days, there's a commonality between myself and the new hire. And then truthfully, again, for management people, and I take this upon myself personally, if I don't maintain that person after 90 days, I have failed. I want to make sure that I give that person every tool, everything between these two ears that I can give that person to make them, number one, a great team player, number two, a great person. And so that's how I build my families, because in this industry, we spend more time with each other than we do our own families. And I can go on that subject too. You better find the right person, husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, that understands this industry, because we work nights, weekends, holidays, Christmas, Mother's Day. So you better find the right mate that can put up with your work hours in this industry.
I completely agree.
There's so much of a chemistry that goes along with the job. The job gives you a paycheck and helps you pay the rent. But if you're not in a good chemistry environment, you're not in a good team environment, you're not in a loving, caring environment, get out and go find another job, because you're good at what you do, you've been educated, you're good in your class, you're going to do extremely well. I can know it.
Yep. Well, Mr. Brennan, I want to be very mindful for your time, and I know the folks on here will probably have some questions, so if you don't mind, I'm going to open that up to them. And guys, let her rip. All at once.
I have a question.
There you go.
So how do you think growing up around Carnival and being involved in that for so long has influenced how you work and how you work in a team, like you've talked about in different aspects there?
Sure. Mardi Gras is fun, okay? But it's a lot of work too. And so I grew up with it at the dinner table. I grew up with it sitting on the couch. I just kind of, I've got two other brothers, but the baton was passed to me as pertains to Bacchus. I respected my father so much for what he had done and where he came from. Bacchus has got a big story, and I'm sure you've read it, but, it wasn't accepted very well back in 1968 because there was other crews that felt like Mardi Gras belonged to them. And my father was, no, we want Mardi Gras to bring tourism to the city. We want gays to be allowed to come into the club. We want blacks. We want Hispanics. It does now. It's an all male crew, so we don't have women. But there's other crews that have just women, and there's other crews that have women and men. But so that was the only thing that he put out there, that we would continue to just be an all male crew. So he really pushed a lot of buttons back then, because back in the 60s, there were still, blacks couldn't come to restaurants in some cases, and blacks couldn't do this and blacks couldn't do that. Jews couldn't belong to clubs. Italians couldn't belong to certain clubs. And Irish, we're an Irish Catholic. I mean, Irish were just looked down upon in the 30s and 40s and 50s in New Orleans. And so that was a big time change in the 50s and 60s in New Orleans and the world, in the United States. So he pushed that envelope, and people wanted to get rid of him, and people did not want Bacchus to be, because he was opening it up to everyone. And all he said was, look, guys, I'm not trying to change Mardi Gras. I'm not trying to change what you do. We're trying to improve Mardi Gras. And we're trying to give everyone we're trying to give everyone the chance to experience Mardi Gras. And so back then, you had very small crews and you only had a few parades. And hospitality, the hotel occupancy was less than 30% for Mardi Gras weekend. It was terrible. And that's why my father, as a restaurateur and the head of the tourism committee and the head of the restaurant association, he said, we've got to make Mardi Gras a bigger attraction for the world to come to New Orleans, for the world's spotlight to be on New Orleans. And that's why he created and expanded Bacchus, and that's why they came up with a celebrity king. Before, it was just but these are great men and women that were kings and queens of local Mardi Gras crews. But there was never a world figure that became the Mardi Gras Bacchus king. And so when Danny Kaye was the first king of Bacchus in 1968, he was the biggest thing in Hollywood at that time. And so the press was key. My dad knew how to work the press, as my grandfather knew how to work the press, to get the excitement about what's happening in New Orleans. And so now you have millions of people that come to the city in New Orleans. We have over 40,000 hotel rooms now. Back then we had 6,000 hotel rooms in 1968. We had 10 or 20 restaurants. Now we have 1,600 restaurants. So Mardi Gras was another catapult for the tourism industry in New Orleans. And prior to that, it was a very quiet Mardi Gras. They had very closed door crews. You had to be white. You had to be Protestant to belong to these clubs. And my father broke all of those ceilings, if you want to call it, and started Bacchus as a parade and allowed all to come. And now we have huge women groups. We have huge men groups. We have huge male and female groups. We have walking groups. We have gay groups. We have black groups. We've got Mardi Gras in the city of New Orleans, as they call it, is the greatest gumbo pot in the world. Mm-hmm. And that is why our culture and our food is so good, because there's so many people from around the world. Mm-hmm. And Betsy, I hope that answered your question. But as far as Clark Brennan is concerned, again, the shoes that I must fill, the pressure is huge. I've got 1,600 members, and I'm ultimately responsible for $6 million plus business, and plus my city, my state, my region. And I want to make sure that I'm the best cheerleader out there for our culture, our industries, and the betterment of the people in this region.
Thank you.
So no, I don't sleep a lot when Mardi Gras comes around, and in times like this, you know, I'm sad to my soul for the people that have passed away. I'm sad to my soul to the people that have lost their jobs, and it's a very difficult time. But you have to be strong. You have to have a backbone, and you have to stand up for yourself. You have to stand up for your industry. You have to stand up for your religion to move forward in the times like we have today.
Yep. That's great. Anybody else? Kelly?
I don't have a question necessarily, but Clark, so I read the book about your great aunt, about Miss Ella, and I waited my first table when I was 15, and I was hooked. I mean, you treat them nice, you're friendly to them.
It is a drug.
Yeah, and they give you cash. All you gotta do is bring them what they want, and they're nice to them, and they give you cash. And I was like, why do people screw up this formula? So that led to my career in the restaurant industry. That went on with my degrees from Oklahoma State in hospitality and working for Eskimo Joe's and Timmy's in Tulsa. I've always been in the private sector versus the public. But I have to tell you, when I read that book, being a woman in the food and beverage industry, especially in a general manager position, often when I went with Joe's, when we all went somewhere, I was the only female GM, you know, and I was keeping the boys from going to the strip club later that night after the food conference, you know, even though I probably would have gone anyway. But, you know, that was just really inspiring to see how Ella paved that way for us. Because if I was facing that in the 90s, what discrimination as being a woman in this industry she must have dealt with in her time. Yeah. So that book really touched me, and I just wanted your family to know that, you know, that she was a forerunner and for us in this industry, and so I'm a big fan girl. So,
and I will say something as her nephew. You know, we had a big split in the family. I'm sure you've read all of that.
I read in the book, yeah.
So I am third generation, but Aunt Ella, even though she's on the other side, we're past all that today. A lot of that's behind us now, thank God. And she's in heaven, so she's not even here today. She always supported me in everything that I did. She sent me letters, even when we were split. You know, and my dad, you know, it was just one of those things where families split over stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And, but I will tell you, she was a tough son of a bitch. Okay.
I could tell.
You know, you weren't running over Aunt Ella. And, you know, she wasn't the prettiest person. She wasn't the nicest person. But you know what? She earned the respect of others. Mm-hmm. And she, as I told you a little bit ago, you must have a backbone in this business, in any business, to stand up for yourself. Be confident in yourself. Educate yourself. I'm 55 years old. I still learn something new every day. I just learned what a latke was yesterday on the Food Network. I'd never heard of it. Okay? And I just learned 2 new dishes, latke, which is, I don't know if y'all know what it is, but it's like a potato hash with onions. It's like what the hell is it? Eggs and bacon and I can't think of the word.
Hash.
You know, potato. What do you call the thing at wallflower? Scattered, smothered, covered.
Buttered, smattered. Well, I can't remember it.
Hash browns.
Buttered.
Hash browns. There we go. Thanks, Rob. Hash browns. So just an example. And so I'm watching that with my daughters yesterday. Every day I get asked questions from my members or customers about something. And I never am embarrassed to say, I don't have that answer, but hold on, I'll go get it for you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I make Google your friend. Oh. And so you have to be confident in yourself. And Ella was confident because she was a horrendous reader. She read the newspaper every day. She watched the news every day. She traveled. She read cookbooks. She read stuff before there was the internet. Today we can type in anything and immediately get it.
Mm-hmm.
So you younger generation, use that to your advantage and learn and taste and drink. You must know what you're talking about so you can be confident in front of somebody that says to you, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. The customer's not always right. They are right most of the time, but they're not always right. And you need to stand your ground sometime. And so that is something that Ella strived at because she knew she was a woman, but she knew that it was a man's world. And back then, the woman was supposed to be at home, pregnant, and taking care of the children. And one of the toughest jobs, and maybe is the toughest job, is being a mother of kids and et cetera. But our industry is a very tough industry. And so kudos to her for
Totally.
taking it by the horn, the bull by the horns, and not putting up with any bullshit from anybody, because she'd put it right back in your face. And you know what? And she treated her staff very tough. But if she respected you extremely, if you were engaging and you wanted to know and you wanted to ask questions and you wanted to learn, she was there for you. She was a loving, caring person. Mm-hmm. But if you were full of BS,
she knew it.
She knew it immediately.
That's great. That's great. Who else? I know we've got some more questions, yeah? No?
Clark, I'm Kathy Smith. I'm in the apparel program with Alexandra and Stephanie. We were going to all be in New Orleans. We had several apparel students going too. Can you speak a little bit about the retail industry, because of, that business is a mix. And I think you mentioned that the restaurant industry, you can get a job anywhere. In the hospitality industry, it's kind of the same with the apparel industry and merchandising. You can go anywhere. So can you speak a little bit to the apparel and the retailing and the merchandising industry in New Orleans?
You said Kathy, right?
Yes.
Kathy. Yes, ma'am. Okay. It's real easy. You know why? Because the hospitality industry and the apparel industry, that's what we're talking about today. Guess what's the common denominator? One's got food, one's got clothes. But you know what? It all comes down to the common denominator, and that is people. We are in the people business. Whether you're a salesman, you're in the people business. I'm selling food and beverage. You're selling the latest blue jeans. It comes down to relationships. I cannot stress that enough. It comes down to treating others the way you would want to be treated. It comes down to respecting the gay community. It comes down to respecting blacks, whites, Hispanics. We're all in this world together. And it is the people business. And I don't care if you're in politics, if you're digging ditches, if you're in the apparel, restaurant, you name the industry, it is a people business. And if you can't succeed in the people business, you're not going to, you'll get a job. You'll support yourself, but you're not going to be a leader. You're not going to be the best that you can be. You have got to be in the people business. And not everyone can be an outgoing person that you should be in the apparel business or the restaurant business. And that's why we have accountants and we have lawyers. They're good at paperwork. They're good at what they do. But they're not people person. But in our industry, in the apparel, in the restaurant, in the majority of industries, you better be a people person. So you got to learn people skills. Take a speech class. Go learn how to speak in public, how to pronounce words, how to get your point across in 3 minutes. I took a speech class in high school, and I still go back to it to this day. How to get your point across in 3 minutes. And when you're supposed to talk for 3 minutes, it's a lifetime when you're up there by yourself. You know, you've got to be the best that you can be and learn as much as you can learn about a lot of different things so you can talk to your customer who's from Paris, France. You know, bring up something about Paris, France when you're talking. Believe me, it goes a long way. You know, talk about them, not you. In the interview process, I'll go back to that, Rob. You know, there's no problem in asking questions about the guy or girl who's asking you questions. You know, be engaged. Well, Mr. Brennan, you know, are you married? Are you have children? Tell me a little bit about you too, because you better understand who you're going to work for and who is that person. You know, what do you like to do? Hunt, fish, play golf, sew, go to see sporting events. Learn as much as you can from that person that's interviewing you. But Kathy, back to your point, it's the people business, and I hope I answered that question. But I'm just adamant about the people. Yeah. It's a people world we live in today.
Yeah, Mr. Brennan, Kathy went. Was this your first time when I met y'all down there? Don't
Kathy? Tell any secrets.
Oh, no, not at all. But that was your first trip, right? Wasn't that your first time? I know it was Kelly.
It was my first trip.
It was Kelly's first. Okay, it was Kelly's first trip. Yeah. It was their first time. So I think you can talk about how good the culture is and how welcoming and how people and relationship based it is. And until you experience it, you can actually touch all 5 senses with that. It comes to life. So what you're talking about, I think, means a little bit more now that they've had that experience.
Yes.
So, it's
and to go a little bit further on that, Rob, it was my second time to go really visit the city. The first time I was at the conference, but that's why we wanted to take apparel students, hospitality students, nutrition, a variety, a diverse group, because to your point, Clark, it's a diverse city. But it was a hard sell for us as faculty to say, we're going to New Orleans to study apparel and to study the retail industry, the merchandising industry. And there's a lot there. After doing the research and finding, people would come out of the woodwork with, oh yeah, I own a little boutique on Royal Street or whatever.
Yeah.
So we were really looking forward to that piece. But to your point, you treat everybody the same and you allow everybody in, and you're going to be a better person, but a better leader, a better manager, and the people that you work with are going to shine and pull more out. Alexandra, I want to hear what you have to say, not putting you on the spot.
I completely agree. That's how I am today, and it goes a long way just getting guests connected and just reaching out even to make them feel important and stuff like that. I feel like if you are a people person, it can go a long way and you can learn from it, and that's what I think.
When you're a people person, it makes you at ease in your own skin.
I think it makes everything come like more naturally, and
I agree. It's just another great asset to have. Again, not everybody's a people person, but it's a great asset to have. And I thank God every day that I have that's my number one asset is people. And there's other people that can cook better. There's other people that can play golf better. You gotta know your positives and your negatives, and whatever your negatives are, try to learn and make them better. whatever your positives are, continue to hone those skills. Again, I can't make a martini like Joey can make a martini. He can make 100 to my 1. So I better use Joey and learn from Joey. And what can I see with Joey? I talk to my bartenders on a regular basis about what's new and what's out there, what's the different things to try. And so, again, you're constantly honing your skills. You should be constantly reading. I don't read enough. I am a terrible reader, and shame on me for that. But I do watch shows on TV when I have time. I do watch the Cooking Network. I do go to Google a lot in Wikipedia. I'll just give you a quick story. There was a big issue about a French 75. And so what is the classic French 75? Well, most people today say for those that might not know, a French 75 is champagne, and I'm going to say cognac, and simple syrup, and lemon, okay? Mm-hmm. But if you pull it up today, and the first thing comes up is gin. Mm-hmm. It'd be gin, champagne, simple syrup, and lemon juice. Well, coming from a classic French Creole restaurant, it was always cognac. And so I had not a fight, but my sister Shannon, and we were going back and forth drinking French 75s one night, and I was drinking with cognac. She wanted with gin. And I said, well, you're wrong. And so we pulled up the internet, and the internet comes up with gin. Mm-hmm. But my 86-year-old father settled it, and he said, dig deeper, which we did, and it does come up way down deep. Go down a little further on the Google page that when you talk about a classic French 75, it was cognac. And like my dad said, for a French 75, for a French drink to be the classic French drink, do you think they would have put a British gin in that drink? He said, I have no more questions. I ain't saying another word. It's cognac. So
Beefeater paid to do that. Beefeater paid Google to put that in there.
That's great. That's great.
But that's another example of going to the internet to educate yourself and to get the story straight. And so just a little side note.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to be mindful of everybody's time here. We've been at this for a lot longer than we thought, and we are very appreciative for your time here, Mr. Brennan. This is fantastic. We hope to reinvent this trip down to New Orleans at some point in the future, and all things being equal, we hope you could join us on that, at least for a portion of the time. It would definitely, I think, be of value to everybody involved. So we certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you very much for it. And if there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. Outside of, I think you've got all of us lathered up to go to the restaurants and to go to the parade as well. So,
sure.
Yes.
Well, look, it's all about fun. It's all about enjoying life. In this time, though, I would ask for your prayers. For everyone to get through this tough time. We will get through this tough time, but it will take due diligence. It will take lots of praying and caring to get through what we're going through, so we can get back to the laissez les bon temps rouler, let the good times roll in our city and other great cities across the country.
I agree. All right. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care now.
All right. This was wonderful. Thanks. Stay safe.
All right.
Bye-bye.